This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's July 11th, 2025. 70 years ago today, President Eisenhower signed a law adding the words, "In God We Trust," to all U.S. currency. Of course, the motto dates back much further than that. It was used on the regalia of a Pennsylvania militia as far back as the late 1740s. It's mentioned in the fourth verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. Those lyrics were written in 1814. And the motto was also already on some of our money before Eisenhower signed that into law. Late in the Civil War, the Union started stamping it on some coins as part of overall messaging that emphasized the idea that God was on the side of the Northern cause. The Battle Hymn of the Republic is part of that effort, too. So going into 1955, some coins said, "In God We Trust," but not all of them, and no paper currency bore those words. Just like the way that members of the Union wanted to position themselves as fighting a kind of holy war against the slave-holding Confederacy, in the 1950s, there was a lot of talk contrasting America against, as folks would put it, godless communists. So emphasizing the widespread nature of religion, and especially Christianity in this country, took on an extra layer of patriotism. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Whatever our money may say, one thing that has been a constant in this station since the very start is a push and pull between very overt expressions of religion and religious thought in the public sphere and efforts to keep a divide between faith and government. Just a year before "In God We Trust" was added to all money, the nation's tax code was amended to expressly bar churches and other nonprofits from endorsing political candidates. It was called the Johnson Amendment because it was sponsored by future President Lyndon B. Johnson, who was in the U.S. Senate at the time. And the amendment basically said you can't be tax exempt and make an explicit endorsement. Now, I think it's safe to say a lot of Tennessee churches have long walked a fine line of just barely following that law. And in recent years, it seems more and more have just ignored it altogether, especially when it comes to certain presidential candidates. And really, when was the last time you heard of the IRS actually acting to revoke a church's tax-exempt status? I'm not saying it hasn't happened. It certainly has. But you know what? According to NPR's reporting, only once, ever. More common is that the line gets crossed and some folks get uncomfortable while others are really satisfied to hear their opinions echoed from the pulpit. And the uncomfortable folks don't speak up. Church members uncomfortable with overt campaigning might leave for a less political congregation. But it's always been pretty unusual for anyone to actually call up the IRS and say, "Hey, Pastor Jones over here is flouting the law. Shouldn't you revoke their tax exemption?" Well, this week, the IRS filed a court document that essentially asked a court for permission to declare the Johnson Amendment dead. It came in the context of a lawsuit that the National Religious Broadcasters filed against the federal government, challenging the restriction. And the IRS is saying to the court that it's reached a consent agreement to basically end the suit by declaring the Johnson Amendment unconstitutional. Now, constitutionality can be a very interesting concept when it comes to something like the Establishment Clause. Whether they meant to or not, our founders often wrote amendments in language that was so simple that it can be taken multiple ways. Specifically, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment says, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." That's it. It definitely says we can't establish an official state religion like a lot of other nations have. But beyond that, does it build a brick wall between church and state that neither side can cross? The Johnson Amendment is just one example of many decisions through the years that have worked from that interpretation. Or does it say religious groups have full liberty to do whatever, and the government needs to just get out of the way? Now, there's no question that Tennessee's version of the Establishment Clause is much more specific. That part of our state constitution, which was written in a much more verbose style, circa 1869, says this: that all men have a natural and indefeasible right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own conscience, that no man can of right be compelled to attend, erect, or support any place of worship, or to maintain any minister against his consent, that no human authority can, in any case whatever, control or interfere with the rights of conscience, and that no preference shall ever be given by law to any religious establishment or mode of worship. A lot more words there. But I will say, I still wouldn't be quite sure whether the Johnson Amendment would fly if it were governed by the Tennessee Constitution. I mean, would withholding tax-exempt status be considered a human authority interfering with the rights of conscience? Maybe. Right now, the question of constitutionality and the Johnson Amendment is basically in the hands of a court in a kind of a sideways manner. What do I mean by sideways? Well, the court definitely gets final say over whether the consent agreement can go into effect. But it's a really big deal that a major agency of the federal government has reached this agreement in the first place. And it's an agreement to reject a law that was rarely ever enforced at all. So honestly, how likely is it that a court would say, no, we aren't going to allow this? That is possible, but certainly unlikely. And I'll just put it this way. I don't see many people in the know looking at this court filing from the IRS and saying it's anything but a done deal. Which means we could be entering interesting days for some Nashville-based institutions, like the United Methodist and Southern Baptist denominations. The Baptists, in particular, did just pass a resolution encouraging churches to push for a political agenda of traditional conservative ideas around marriage and families. And this gives them the go-ahead to do more than support ideas. They now have the okay to explicitly and vocally back candidates whose platform aligns with those stances. Just in time for a special election to fill the seat of outgoing Tennessee Congressman Mark Green. I really love it when we can balance out a heavy or heady topic with something that's just plain delightful. And in just a few minutes, we're talking fireflies. That's coming up after the newscast.
We know that local government isn't the only part of your life.
Like the mayor, I know that city government isn't the only thing you're concerned with.
We are still struggling to find affordable housing.
Particularly with this bus stop.
That's one of the unique challenges with my business.
I'm WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams. I'm working to break down topics like transit, housing, and local government to make sure that when you are thinking about Metro, you're getting the full story. Follow my latest stories at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. 2 Republican Congress members from Tennessee filed a bill yesterday that would impose mandatory minimum sentences of 15 years on people found guilty of possessing illegal firearms and who already have 3 or more serious felony convictions. The proposed legislation is called the Restoring the Armed Career Criminal Act. Senator Marsha Blackburn and Representative David Kustoff introduced the bill. It basically reworks the so-called 3 strikes law from 1984. The U.S. Supreme Court partially struck down that law in 2015, saying it gave federal judges wide discretion for determining what constitutes a violent felony. The new legislation clarifies some of the language of the earlier law by using the term serious felonies, which is defined as crimes punishable by at least 10 years in prison. The Tennessean reports the new legislation is endorsed by the state's Attorney General, Jonathan Skrmetti, as well as the National Association of Police Organizations and the National Narcotic Officers Association's coalition. Death row inmate Byron Black is asking Tennessee's governor to commute his death sentence because of his intellectual disability. Black is scheduled to be executed on August 5th. Back in 2021, death row inmates gained the right to petition the court for a determination of their disability. That law was signed by Governor Bill Lee. Black's petition argues that he was denied the hearing on procedural grounds. His attorneys say there's no doubt that he has an intellectual disability and that he's the only person on the state's death row to be denied the benefits of the new law. Now he's asking for clemency from the governor to live out his remaining days in prison with no possibility of parole. His clemency application says he has end-stage kidney disease, congestive heart failure, diabetes, and prostate cancer. Tennessee expanded its school voucher program statewide this year and removed income caps for half of the available slots. Dr. Felipe Barrero Osorio has researched voucher programs in different countries and explains what disparities might occur in Tennessee's program, even under the new formulation.
Poorest of the poorest didn't apply to the voucher.
Really?
It was the less poor among the poor that the people are right to the voucher. And also that is important for Tennessee because information problems are going to be important for the voucher.
He says some students might not be able to get vouchers because they don't have the necessary information to apply.
Those ones who will have access to those, who will apply, presumably people who are better informed, people who had more resources, who have better social network, those are the ones that are going to apply for those vouchers.
You can hear the full conversation about the new voucher program on the This Is Nashville podcast. The state's mental health department is launching a messaging campaign urging Tennesseans to call someone if they're having suicidal thoughts. The Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services says that it can be a friend, a trusted advisor, or the 988 mental health hotline.
Please call someone if you ever have thoughts of ending your life.
Promise me. We're losing too many people of all ages to suicide.
Your life is precious. Will you promise to call?
Learn more at promisetocall.com.
On average, more than 3 Tennesseans die of suicide every day. This data comes from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The agency's commissioner, Marie Williams, says making a promise can be very meaningful to a person. And during a crisis, it could be life-saving. Axios Nashville reports there's been an uptick in the number of Tennesseans using the hotline. This comes at a time when the Trump administration recently announced it would not fund a special crisis line for LGBTQ minors. The head of Monroe Carroll Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt is retiring. Dr. Meg Rush has spent her entire career at the hospital, starting as a neonatology resident in 1984, rising through the ranks until she became president in 2020. Under Rush's leadership, the hospital added 160,000 square feet to its Midtown building, opened a surgery center and a clinic in Murfreesboro, and created Tennessee's first pediatric inpatient rehabilitation unit for children 13 and younger recovering from life-altering illnesses or injuries. Vanderbilt says it will conduct a nationwide search to find her successor. The Tennessee Valley Authority has added 500 more megawatts to its power grid. That's enough to power over 300,000 homes across its 7-state region. WEOT's Luke Lamery has more.
The energy increase is a result of 10 new aeroderivative gas turbines installed in the Johnsonville combustion turbine plant near Nashville. The plant will now provide over 1,200 megawatts to TVA's grid. The new lightweight turbines mix air and fuel together, producing hot air that can generate up to 59 megawatts per unit. According to a news release, the aeroderivative design allows for the turbines to ramp up quickly. TVA officials say recent population growth was a factor for adding more power. The announcement comes after the TVA's power grid saw peak demand of over 30,000 megawatts amid last month's heat wave. That prompted the federal utility to ask customers to reduce their energy consumption. For WUOT News, I'm Luke Lamery.
TVA has planned 9 gas plants and 3 pipelines since 2020. 3 of the plants, including New Johnsonville, have now come online. Gas is a fossil fuel composed of methane that is now TVA's second largest source of electricity, quickly catching up to nuclear. Tennessee State University's hockey team will not make its expected debut this fall. The first ice hockey team at a historically black university will not play its first game until 2026. The Nashville Banner reports the delay is related to the university's ongoing financial problems, which stem from the state underfunding the university by over $500 million over the past 50 years. The hockey team needed to be self-funded. The development staff is focused on raising $5 million to cover the first 2 seasons, but hasn't yet reached its goal. TSU announced its plans to create an ice hockey team in 2023. The National Hockey League and the Nashville Predators backed the effort, and the team is expected to play as a Division I team. Now the university is focused on community engagement, initiatives to increase donations, and continued program development. A baby bald eagle is likely to take its first flight any day now. That's the word from park officials at Nashville's Radnor Lake State Park. The baby bird is jumping and flapping its wings, a sign that it's ready to soar soon. News Channel 5 reports the eaglet is the offspring of parents who've been living in the park for the past 4 years. Eagle watchers were dismayed in February when a storm destroyed the bald eagle's nest that contained 2 eggs. But the parents rebuilt the nest, and soon a new egg appeared. Once the baby bald eagle starts flying, it will be allowed to roost with its parents for a few more months, learning how to hunt and build its own nest. Then at some point in October, it'll be time for the bird to fly off and find its own home. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. The season for the blue ghost fireflies is at its peak at Bernheim Forest and Arboretum near Louisville, Kentucky. Kentucky Public Radio's Sylvia Goodman takes us through the forest to learn about the efforts to study the rare Appalachian lightning bug.
Right around sunset in Bernheim Forest and Arboretum in Claremont, the bird songs of the day slowly shifted to the throaty frog calls of the night. In the darkness, illuminated only by the nearly full moon above, Kelly Vowles and Bill Napper swung their nets. They were looking to catch a few of the rare blue ghost fireflies darting between the trees and across the trail in Bernheim Forest.
You got one?
Yeah, he's in my net. He stopped glowing, but he's in there. Oh, there he goes again.
These blue ghost fireflies are generally associated with the southern Appalachian region, but they've also found a home in Bernheim. Unlike the blinking yellowish light of the Big Dipper fireflies you might see in your backyard, blue ghosts leave their light on for several seconds. Vowles held up her net as the little beetle shone its ghostly light, and she shook out a plastic bag to hold him.
Oh man, he's really glowing.
He is glowing.
Like a happy one.
These fireflies glow a light bluish-green color that appears a kind of neon green on camera. While little is known about the blue ghost population or their broader habitat, they've become a kind of tourist attraction in some places like North Carolina, and now Bernheim. Napper, a Bernheim volunteer who leads night tours through the forest, is helping collect specimens for a study out of the University of Georgia. Researchers are working to understand the genetics of Bernheim's blue ghosts and see if they're genetically the same as those found from Georgia up through North Carolina and Tennessee.
These are widely dispersed over a big area in the United States, and for all we know, there could be different species within what we all think is the same one.
Since these and other fireflies are understudied, it's hard to say whether they're in decline, but researchers say there are a lot of threats to them. Like many other firefly species, blue ghost fireflies are threatened by habitat degradation, light pollution, and climate change. And unlike some other fireflies, the blue ghost females never develop wings, instead sticking to the ground. Vowles, Bernheim's research coordinator, says the first step is knowing what they've got, which is trickier than you think.
The things I think a lot of people are trying to figure out is how can we start monitoring and telling whether or not the fireflies are in decline. It's really hard to survey for a firefly because it's hard to count when you have a bunch of them lighting up or none lighting up.
And fireflies are important predators, too, helping keep the bug ecosystem balanced. In their larval stage, fireflies are apparently voracious predators.
They like to eat everything. So they'll eat snails and anything else that they can catch. They're predatory.
Did you say snails?
Yes. They'll eat big stuff, bigger than them.
Napper first fell in love with the blue ghosts when he discovered them in Bernheim. As he looks out over the sea of little blue-green lights, Napper says they remind him of something supernatural.
Just little fairies lit up, flying through the forest, hovering 2-3 feet off the ground.
He worries about light pollution encroaching on their territory or torrential flooding washing them out. But this year, the little creatures came out in force. Last month, Napper captured Bernheim's first ever photo of a female blue ghost with all her glow spots visible. Bernheim is hosting a few more opportunities to view the blue ghosts and other firefly species until the end of the month and the close of their peak season. I'm Sylvia Goodman in Bernheim Forest.
That story was produced as part of the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, a collaboration between NPR and several public radio stations in West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at local news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. That really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up next week.